Hello there. Today I thought I'd have a look and see if I could find some good value for money to show you from Burgundy, and I hope I've done so. This is a Macon Fuisse from a producer called Vincent Girardin. It's the 2017 vintage, and this is a Vieilles Vignes cuvee, so an old vines cuvee. Macon tends to be regarded as a sort of a value for money appellation down in the south of Burgundy, making wines for everyday drinking out of the Chardonnay grape. But there is one area, the region of Fuisse, to the southeast of the town of Macon itself, where the soil types are more suited to growing better quality Chardonnay. So you have 5 communes that are allowed to use this Fuisse name, and the hillsides there are chalky limestone, which is really suited to growing quite precise, elegant Chardonnays. Within those 5 communes, there's one of them, Fuisse, that's allowed to make a Macon under its own name. And so you get the advantages of that good terroir. The Macon allows you higher yields, so it's not always realised. But the other thing to think about, this is a Macon from a good terroir, is that it's a Macon from a good producer. Girardin is a wonderful story actually. In the 1980s, 1982, as an 18-year-old, Vincent Girardin decided he wanted to make top quality Burgundy. And being a young man from Santenay and without sort of family vineyards, he had to find a way to do that without vineyard ownership. So he started on a program of dealing with growers where he made sure that he controlled everything. So he create a contract with a grower that ensured that he controlled the way the vines were trained, so higher training, the yields of fruit, so that there weren't too high yields and the fruit became concentrated. He would make sure that they dropped excess fruit. He'd make sure they plucked leaves to expose fruit to the sunlight. He would regulate the time of harvest, and sometimes would even send his own team of pickers in to do the harvest, to ensure that all the quality steps were seen to. He also made sure that the growers he worked with didn't use herbicides or pesticides, and he built his business. He built a reputation for making some really fantastic wines, and eventually, by the time he sold his the company that bears his name in 2012, I think he had about 20 hectares of some really prime Burgundy vineyards. So someone who really built up his name by making quality wines. In the winery as well, these practices continued. His approach was to try and make sure that the purity of the fruit from a particular place made its way into the bottle, and the ways he did that was he only used the naturally occurring yeasts, ambient fermentations, only used the naturally occurring bacteria to do the malolactic conversion. Although the wines age in barrel, they do so with minimal new oak, so that the oak didn't cover the flavours of the fruit. So this wine, for instance, ages in large barrels, so there's less oak influence from a larger barrel. 500 litre casks are what this ferments and ages in, and of that only 10% is new, so there's not a lot of vanilla or cedar flavour making its way in there. Some of the practices he's used have been biodynamic. For instance, bottling only takes place in line with the lunar calendar, this idea of trying to be at harmony with nature to get the best expression in the wine there. So let's have a look at the wine and see how that ties up with what I was saying. So as I say, there's a Vieilles Vignes cuvee, so the vines that this is made from are 40 years old. So again, it should be low yielding, concentrated fruit. The colour it's a pale to medium yellow. When I swirl the wine, it doesn't particularly show heavy tears to show huge viscosity. The wine says it on the label, it says it's 13% alcohol, so that's not particularly high. Let's have a look at the aromas, shall we? Smelling it, there's a nice intensity. It's not huge, but the wine certainly has a presence. There's a creaminess to it, and that's from the yeast lees in the barrel. But behind that there is there's a minerality, there's sort of a slight wet stone, maybe a touch of flintiness. and under all that, there is fruit. This is Chardonnay, so it's not opulent, forward, aromatic fruit. This is quite sort of hint of green apple, maybe a little citrus, those sort of notes coming through there. But really, it's the creamy yeastiness that's overtaking the aromas there. So let's try it. The wine is dry. There's a lovely acidity and a toastiness at first. A toastiness that is not necessarily oaky toast, but a mineral note, sort of slight flinty, gunflint sort of, and slightly sort of fireworky sort of note, smoky maybe, and I think that's a fermentation aroma. But that's all coming ahead of a lovely sort of creamy mid palate that is sort of smooth, has a medium-bodied, a nice presence, rounded, not particularly complex, but a good intensity of fruit that lasts nicely. The freshness is sufficient to lift the fruit quite nicely, and there is a sharpness, a slight tartness, a green apple note to the acidity, and the alcohol, although it seems to be giving weight to the mid palate, at the finish it's not overpowering that, so you've got a sort of a confluence of that sort of creaminess and the sort of green apple freshness and citrus notes, and that's lasting quite well, and then they fade, and eventually you get at this sort of minerally whetstone sort of note on the finish that lasts reasonably well. For a Macon Village, this has a nice intensity. It's beautifully balanced. I think the fact that it's 2017 means that it's quite harmonious, and it's almost certainly drinking at its at pretty much its peak now, although there doesn't seem to be a hurry to drink it up. And I think quality-wise, its intensity and its elegance put it on a par with an average quality Pinot Fuisse, which is fantastic value for money, in honesty, in this. So yes, when you're looking for bargains in Burgundy, looking for lesser appellations but really good producers is often a good way to go. So yes, Vincent Girardin, and well worth trying. Thank you for listening. Bye now.